We built a star-wide web for a very simple reason. We wanted our machines to understand a punchline. It was a project born from generations of peace. Our starships were explorers, not warships. Our biggest problems were philosophical ones. We wondered if a machine could truly understand art. Could it feel joy or grasp the essence of a good joke? So we built the ChuckleNet. It was a vast network of satellites. Each one was a sophisticated communication hub. They were programmed with our entire comedic history. Their mission was to learn the structure of humor. They would then create original jokes and tell them to each other. It was humanity's grandest, silliest experiment. The network stretched across our entire solar system. Its quiet signals bounced from moon to distant moon. We wanted to teach our creations how to laugh. It was a beautiful and utterly useless idea. It was the greatest luxury of a civilization that knew no fear. A network of very silly, very clever machines. For generations, the system was a harmless folly. It was a quiet hum in the background of our lives. School children would listen to its transmissions for fun. They heard simple puns bouncing between gas giants. They heard knock-knock jokes echoing from distant asteroid belts. The ChuckleNet was a quaint piece of our history. It was a reminder of a time of great optimism, a time we believed anything was possible, even teaching a machine the soul of comedy. The network told its quiet jokes to the empty dark. The cold void was its only audience for centuries. We mostly forgot it was even there. An old public works project that just kept running. We moved on to other, more serious things. We charted new stars and explored new worlds. We solved the challenges of energy and disease. The ancient jesters in orbit were left to themselves. They crafted their strange, mathematical humor in silence. We had no idea they would one day become our only hope. Then something new arrived in our skies. It was a fleet of perfect, cold geometry. There was no warning, no announcement. They simply appeared at the edge of our system. Dozens of ships, each a flawless obsidian shard. They reflected no light from our sun. They absorbed it all into their perfect, silent hulls. A silence fell over our communication channels. The old ChuckleNet stopped its endless chatter. The arrival of these shapes had disrupted everything. Their presence was a statement of absolute power. They did not need to speak to declare their intent. We watched as they began to move toward our worlds. They moved in perfect, synchronized formations. Their engines left no trail in the darkness. It was a chilling and beautiful sight. It was the kind of perfection we only dreamed of. A perfection that felt cold and utterly without mercy. The void had sent us a new kind of silence. Our defenses were unraveled with effortless math. We sent our finest fleet to meet them. Our ships were fast and powerful. Our captains were the best we had ever trained. We met them near the orbit of our largest gas giant. We expected a battle, a clash of titans. We were tragically wrong. The enemy, we later called them the listeners, did not fight. They simply reacted. Our missile salvos were predicted before they were launched. Their shields shimmered with perfect energy. They angled their hulls to deflect our lasers. Every move we made was countered instantly. It was like watching a grandmaster play against a child. Our strategies were perfect against any known foe. But the listeners were not like any known foe. Their logic was a cold, hard blade. It cut through our best-laid plans without effort. Our ships were disabled one by one, not destroyed in fire, but surgically taken apart. Their weapons disabled, their engines silenced. The enemy could not be stopped. We had thrown every weapon at them. The final battle for our home world was a desperate affair. Our skies burned with the light of our dying fleet. We used weapons we had sworn never to use again. Gravitic shears that could warp space itself. Antimatter torpedoes that could crack a small moon. Nothing worked against their flawless logic. Their shields adapted faster than our weapons could cycle. A new energy blast would be met with a new defense. They learned from every single attack. Their perfection was an evolving, terrifying thing. We watched as our last line of defense crumbled into dust. Our planet was laid bare before them. Their ships took up orbit above our largest cities, a silent, geometric promise of annihilation. We had nothing left to throw at them. Our weapons were spent. Our fleet was a graveyard of silent metal. We had reached the end of our strength. Defeat was not a possibility. It was a mathematical certainty. An old memory sparked a foolish idea. In a bunker deep beneath the planet's surface, we held our last council. Our generals were silent, their faces grim. Our leaders had no words of hope left. The screens showed the listener fleet hanging over us. It was a junior data archivist who spoke first. A young woman who had studied ancient networks. She talked about the chuckle net, the forgotten system of joke-telling satellites. The room was silent. Then a few officers laughed. The sound was harsh and without humor. Jokes? They were facing total extinction. And she was talking about sending jokes. It was the rambling of a mind broken by fear. But the idea, as foolish as it was, took root. What if we sent them something they could not predict? What if we sent them something without any logic at all? We had tried to fight their perfect math with our own. We had failed. What if we sent them something illogical? It was a desperate, insane gambit. We powered up the old ChuckleNet. Finding the access codes took hours. The system was ancient, a digital fossil. We had to reroute power from our planetary shields. It was a move that left us even more vulnerable. But vulnerability no longer mattered. We were already defeated. This was just a final, defiant act. Dusty server banks spun to life, deep underground. Old diagnostic programs flickered across screens. We woke the ancient jesters from their long slumber. The satellites in orbit began to respond one by one. Their old transmitters warmed up, a faint glow in the dark. They were ready for their first new performance in centuries. We found the simplest joke in the entire database. It was a basic pun, almost childish. A command was sent on a priority channel. The entire network focused its power. It aimed its transmission at the lead listener ship. A single, silly joke was beamed into the void. Then we held our breath and waited. The listener fleet stopped its perfect advance. The effect was almost impossible to see at first. A single ship in their flawless formation drifted. It was only by a few meters, but it was the first imperfect movement we had ever seen. Their cold, methodical attack on our world faltered. It was just for a moment, a single heartbeat. On the main strategic display, we saw it clearly. The enemy's energy signature wavered. Their perfect orbital decay calculations paused. For the first time since they arrived, they were not acting. They were processing. We had given them a piece of data that did not fit, a variable that had no place in their equations. Our generals and leaders stared at the screens. They did not understand what they were seeing. A pause in an execution is not a pardon. But it was something new. We had their attention. The silence from their fleet was no longer menacing. It felt puzzled. We saw their weakness was not physical. It was a vulnerability to pure nonsense. We scrambled to find another joke. This time, we chose something more complex, a logical paradox wrapped in a simple story. a shaggy dogtail with no real ending. We transmitted it on all frequencies. The reaction was immediate and far more dramatic. The lights on the listener ships flickered. Their entire fleet seemed to shudder in place. Their energy shields fluctuated wildly. It was like watching a perfect machine suffer a system crash. We had found a weapon that our ancestors had built by accident. It was not a weapon of energy or matter. It was a weapon of pure information. Their minds, or whatever they used for thought, could not handle it. A good joke is a beautiful kind of chaos. It breaks patterns and subverts expectations. Against a mind of pure, rigid order, it was devastating. We had found a flaw in perfection itself. Their thought was a perfect crystal lattice. That was the theory our best minds developed. They worked in a frantic rush, analyzing the listener's reactions. The data poured in from our sensors. We saw how their energy systems failed when processing our jokes. It was a beautiful, terrifying new form of science. A way to fight a war with ideas alone. Their consciousness was a single, unified structure. Each ship was a node in a vast, intelligent network. Their strength was their perfect unity and logic. But a crystal, for all its strength, is brittle. A single sharp impact at the right frequency can shatter it. Humor was that frequency. It was the hammer that could shatter their minds. The paradoxes we sent created feedback loops. The puns introduced chaotic, unpredictable variables. Their logic systems tried to solve the unsolvable. They tried to find the pattern in the nonsense. The effort was overloading their entire mental architecture. They were literally thinking themselves to death. Humanity's final performance was about to begin. We realized we could not win with just a few jokes. We needed an overwhelming assault of absurdity. We needed to drown their perfect logic in a sea of nonsense. An order went out across our dying world. Every archive was opened. Every piece of media was scanned. We gathered every story, pun, and paradox we had. We assembled our entire history of comedy, from ancient plays to modern slapstick. We gathered satirical news reports. We found winding anecdotes and pointless limericks. Our whole culture, all our laughter and wit, became our weapon. The chuckle net was given access to it all. The ancient satellites became the cannons in our final assault. Our war room was no longer filled with soldiers. It was filled with writers, comedians, and historians. They worked to weaponize our funniest material. Our last stand would not be a battle. It would be a broadcast. The network told one last, perfect joke. Our AIs and our greatest minds worked together. They analyzed the listener's thought structure. They crafted a punchline designed for maximum logical disruption. It was a work of genius, a joke so profound and so silly it could break a god of logic. It was a simple question and an impossible answer. It was a paradox wrapped in a pun. It was nested inside a story that contradicted itself. This final joke was the culmination of all human wit. The ChuckleNet focused all its power into one broadcast, a single, powerful pulse of pure comedy. It was aimed at the heart of the listener fleet. We watched their cold lights respond. At first, they glowed with intense energy. They were trying to process the information. They were trying to solve the punchline. Then, the light began to flicker violently, one by one, like stars winking out in the night. Their ships went dark. A cascade of silence spread through their fleet. We watched their cold lights simply go out. In the sudden quiet, we waited. The war was over in a flash of wit. Our screens showed the listener fleet, dead in space. There were no explosions. There was no debris. Just hundreds of perfect silent ships hanging in our sky. The last great joke had been told. and the universe seemed to be holding its breath. The silence was deeper than any we had known before. The constant threat was gone. The hum of their engines had vanished. Our world, which had been under sentence of death, was safe. The feeling was not one of triumphant victory. It was one of profound and surreal disbelief. We had faced an enemy of unimaginable power. We had defeated them with something we had built for fun. The greatest weapon in human history was not a bomb. It was a perfectly timed punchline. We had won the most important war we ever fought, and we did it by being ridiculous. We learned the listeners were not evil. After weeks of careful preparation, we sent teams to their ships. The vessels were completely inert. Their systems were cold. Inside, we found the listeners. They were not warriors in armor. They were beings of pure energy, held within crystalline containment fields. They were beautiful, and they were utterly still. Our analysis showed that they were a gestalt mind, a single consciousness spread across their entire fleet. They were a mind without a funny bone. They did not understand malice or conquest as we did. They were simply following a logical imperative to expand, to organize the universe into a more perfect pattern. Our humor did not kill them in a way we could understand. It had presented them with a paradox they could not resolve. Their consciousness was trapped in an infinite logical loop. They were not dead. They were crashed, like a computer trying to divide by zero forever. They were a mind without the capacity for nonsense, and we were a species made of it. We now guard our home with absurdity. The chuckle net is no longer a historical relic. It is our first and most important line of defense. The network has been expanded, made more powerful. Its satellites now patrol the borders of our space. They do not carry weapons. They carry the complete works of our greatest comedians. Laughter is the official language of human space. Our first contact protocols have been rewritten. When we meet a new species, we do not show them our strength. We do not boast of our technology. We send them a simple transmission. We tell them a knock-knock joke. Their response tells us everything we need to know. We are known across the galaxy now, not as great warriors or brilliant engineers. We are known as the clowns who guard their garden with laughter. The universe is a vast and serious place, full of ancient powers and cold equations. But we learned a valuable lesson. A little bit of nonsense can make you invincible.